Is Bali a good place for entrepreneurs? That's the question that I'm going to answer today in this video as a response to the Nomad Capitalist video that was just recently posted about why he chose not to live in Bali and specifically why he prefers other countries in Southeast Asia. My name is Adrian Fields and I'm an expat entrepreneur who's been living in Bali for the past 4 years. So I feel like I'm actually really well placed to delve deeper into the concept and conversation specifically about whether Bali is a good place for entrepreneurs, considering that I've been here for 4 years and that I have built my business into a valuation of over $1 million during that time here in Bali. And I want to discuss in Andrew Henderson's video, who's someone that I respect a lot. I actually just spoke about him in a video that I posted recently about why I want to renounce my US citizenship. But I feel that he has some misconceptions or some subjective and some objective incorrect thoughts about Bali. So one of the first things that Nomad Capitalist mentions is about visas for Indonesia. And he does mention correctly that a lot of people living here, especially digital nomads, tend to be on tourist visas, tend to be coming for a couple months at a time and then leaving and coming back, which is called a visa run. And it is true that getting a proper visa for doing business in Indonesia is not the most simple thing, but it's also not impossible. I just renewed my Kitas, which is a residency visa that's related to my investment in this country and related to a business that I set up here. And while the rules and regulations are constantly changing, which is why you need to have, for example, a lawyer, an agent, an accountant to be on top of all of this stuff, again, it's not impossible. And prior to living in Bali, I did live in Thailand and I was doing that kind of visa run situation for about 6 months. And then I realized I had kind of come to the end of the road in Thailand because specifically there were no good visa options for me as an entrepreneur or as a digital nomad. And I had known other people, for example, in Thailand who were doing things like education visas, which gives you 1 year in the Kingdom of Thailand. And then, generally you could get away with that for a couple years. And the only other option specifically for Thailand was to do the elite visa, which you have to pay quite a lot of money for a 5-year visa. So the reason that I actually chose to stay in Bali long term was because of the fact that I was able to get a residency visa. And again, yes, it is a bit complicated and it does have a certain threshold. For example, if you're not making enough money where you can hire an accountant and you can hire an office and you can, invest the amount that you are required to invest by the law, you're not going to be able to get that. But again, there are other types of visas that people tend to be here for a longer amount of time on, and I just find that Indonesia is easier than other countries in Southeast Asia actually when it comes to those types of visa things. I mean, he states that he prefers Malaysia, for example, that he has a home in Kuala Lumpur. I was reading in the comments of his video that the laws in Malaysia have changed a bit, making the specific visa that he has that's tied to, I think, home ownership or investment a bit more difficult. And I'll get into, further later why I wouldn't want to live in Malaysia anyway. I just find Kuala Lumpur a really boring city. And again, that's one of the pluses for Bali is that it has, in my opinion, a lot more soul and a lot more aesthetic to it than Kuala Lumpur. Another point that Andrew Henderson mentions in his video is banking in Indonesia. He mentions that he doesn't think that you could get a bank account if you don't have a residency visa. That's actually incorrect information. You can get a bank account even if you're here on a tourist visa. For example, before I had my residency in Indonesia, I was banking with an Indonesian bank account. And in order to do that, you just need a reference letter from a local person. So for example, there are many Russians here, for better or for worse, in Bali, who are cut off from the banking system, and they all now have Indonesian bank accounts because it's their only way to be able to live and survive in Bali. Now, if you do have a residency visa, that does open up more options for what I consider better banks that integrate with the applications here that you use every day, like Gojek or Tokopedia or whatever. But as long as you have an Indonesian bank account, then it's a lot better than not having one. So that takes away one of the considerations that Andrew Henderson was mentioning about the fact that if you don't have a bank account and you're paying for things in cash like that, that's just not the case. So even if you're here on a tourist visa, you can open a bank account. The next point that he mentions is talking about society and the fact that he feels that Indonesia is not as developed as some other countries in Southeast Asia. Now that is on some level true. I do think that, for example, Thailand or maybe Malaysia has a certain larger interaction with foreigners. But on the other hand, I think one of the pluses for Indonesian society is that if you're actually coming and planning to stay here long term, then the language is really easy to learn. Now, that's not really a factor if you compare to Malaysia, where there's a wide level of English fluency and they have more or less the same language as Indonesia. But for example, if you were to compare to Thailand, it would take you so long to learn Thai. I mean, the fact that it's a different alphabet, the fact that the pronunciation is very specific, whereas Bahasa Indonesia is a very easy language to learn. It's maybe one of the easiest languages in the world, being that the grammar is very, very simple, and really you just have to learn vocabulary, and the alphabet is the same as the English alphabet. So when it comes to integrating in society, I don't think that there are many challenges in Indonesia. However, for example, I'm finding it an issue right now. I'm trying to hire a graphic designer in my business, and I do find that challenging, that there doesn't seem to be necessarily a high level of talent, and maybe that just comes down to difference in aesthetics or things like that. I don't know, but I'm having trouble, for example, filling that specific role. I do think that Indonesian people in general seem to have a really good work ethic. For the people that work for me, you know, they come and they show up to work every day, and they always have a good attitude and a smiling demeanor. So one of the things that he had mentioned, for example, was, you know, can you trust people if you're trying to build a project? No, I do think that you would have to be on site to observe things, but I generally think that that's kind of how stuff goes almost anywhere. Like, you need someone on the ground who can manage things for you. But again, I don't find that the society here in Bali or in Indonesia at large is so backwards or so, you know, in any way inferior that you can't do business here or that there is some impediment. So the next subject that I want to delve into is expat culture in Bali, because this is something that Andrew Henderson really spoke at length about, specifically comparing, for example, Ubud in Bali, which is a very specific niche neighborhood, to Kuala Lumpur. Now, Bali is a lot more than Ubud. You have specific neighborhoods around this island that each kind of have their own expat feel or vibe, depending on what it is that you're looking for. You can't compare Bali to a major international city, because Bali is an island, it's not a city, and any place that you're living is kind of like an extension of village living. I mean, there's no high-rise buildings here. This is not that type of life. So of course, when you compare it to Kuala Lumpur, it is not going to be as fast-paced. Now, I mean, my experience in Kuala Lumpur, for example, has been that it's rather bland. I don't find it a particularly international city, whereas when I think about the type of people that come to Bali either to live or to visit, I mean, Bali is world famous and renowned, so it tends to attract people from all over the world. And over the 4 years that I've been living here, I mean, I've come across and met people from really everywhere, and I think that that's one of the charming things about Bali, is that it brings together people from everywhere. And I find that also the people that choose to kind of make Bali their home or home base tend to be more creative than the people that would live in Kuala Lumpur. So I felt like this was a very subjective analysis. And for example, Andrew Henderson to me seems to be much more of like a corporate, buttoned up kind of guy, not necessarily a creative person. I mean, he's built a consultancy business, so he talks about that there are more business opportunities in a place like Kuala Lumpur, maybe, but again, that really depends on your business. For me as someone, for example, in the creative and apparel space, I find that there are more synergies with the kind of people here in Bali, whether that comes to working with models or photographers or creative spaces or whatever. I think that there's more of a concentration of creative energy here around where I am, for example, around the Canggu area, than in a place like Kuala Lumpur. I do want to add an addendum to that, since we're still talking about expat culture and life and things like that. I do find at times Bali can be a bit isolating, but I think that it really depends a lot on your energy and what you're willing to put out there. For me, since I've moved into this villa, you know, over a year ago, and I have all of this space, and I don't really like dealing with traffic and things like that, I just don't really go out and socialize that much. But I have realized, or I've noticed, that if I put energy out there that I want to meet people, then I can. And again, the fact that there are people from everywhere, you know, there is that opportunity. The one thing though is that dating for me has really been a very big challenge. But again, I'm gay, so it's different for me than it would be maybe, you know, for a straight person. But I do hear from for example, women and stuff like that, that it's not easy for them to, like, especially around specifically Canggu. I think that there's a really big just hookup culture and people who are not that serious. But again, I'm talking specifically about expats. I'm not talking about the local community at large. So again, this video is really about whether Bali is suited if you are an expat entrepreneur. Let's talk specifically about infrastructure, because this, I think, was a really valid point. Again, I mean, it's hard to compare an island like Bali with any city. The infrastructure here in Bali is not good. I think it's one of the weakest points about living in Bali, the fact that the roads are just in really bad condition. They're too small for the amount of traffic that comes through. And it ends up that, to go from one kind of neighborhood to the next, or one street even to the next in the same neighborhood on a peak time, you could be just stuck in traffic and it's hot and, there's smog and pollution and you're just absolutely miserable. So that really is, I think, the biggest weak point really in Bali is that infrastructure. Another really important point that Andrew Henderson makes is talking about investment opportunities in Bali. The fact that there is red tape, or I don't really remember exactly what he said, but he just said that he would not necessarily invest in Bali, things like a villa, etc., because you can't get a freehold property, you can't own property. That was actually what he discussed. It's coming back to me now. Well, that is true generally. The only kinds of freehold things that you can get are some apartment developments that are currently in process right now. There's, for example, the Tamora development in Canggu that you can actually buy an apartment outright, but that sort of defeats the purpose of living in Bali. Like, who wants to come here and live in an apartment? It's really all about villa living. And the way that that works is that you get a leasehold, and they can be usually around 25 years or longer. And I don't have one of those. I mean, I rent my villa on a yearly basis, but at the same time, you can make a good return on investment, whether it's that you're taking a leasehold villa like that that's already completed and then you want to use that for rental income on a vacation rental basis, or that you get a leasehold for land and then build a villa on it and then re-lease that land with the villa built on it to a different foreigner. So it seems like, I mean, with the amount of development that's going on, people are clearly making their money back and more. I mean, the real estate market here seems to be booming. Prices keep increasing on rentals and on vacations. I mean, Bali is just a hot spot, especially around Canggu, especially around Ubud. And I think that, seeing the direction that development is going, that it just keeps pushing further and further, it doesn't seem like there is an end in sight to that. So I would think the opposite, really, and that's something that here I am in the process of doing as well, that in my plans, I plan to take another villa and do short-term vacation rentals for that. I just think that there are great opportunities for investment, specifically in Bali. And the very last subject that Nomad Capitalist / Andrew Henderson had talked about was the fact that the beaches are not that great in Bali, but I think that he had specifically mentioned something about like the Nusa Dua beaches. The thing that a lot of people don't get about Bali is that Bali is way more than Kuta, Seminyak, Canggu, and Ubud. I mean, this island has so much to explore, and the most quote-unquote like famous areas of Bali do not have the best beaches. But if you want to go and experience gorgeous beaches, Bali has that, and it also has gorgeous rice fields and waterfalls, and I mean, so much to offer. But the thing is that you have to get off the beaten path, and I don't think that Andrew Henderson is the kind of guy that would go around on a motorbike. He just doesn't seem like that to me. But if you go and you explore all of these hidden corners of Bali, for example, my favorite area of Bali is in the northwest called Pamutran, and there is just absolutely stunning beaches and crystal clear water. So Bali and even the other surrounding islands, and if you go to the Gilies and things like that, offers gorgeous beaches and landscapes and all of that kind of stuff. So again, if you just get off the beaten path, then there's everything for you in Bali. So I want to summarize this video by saying that clearly I've chosen Bali for the past 4 years to live because this is actually a great place for expat entrepreneurs, and it's been really friendly to me, and it's allowed me to grow my business and grow my lifestyle. I mean, when I first moved to Bali, my business was kind of getting into a next phase, and the fact that, the low cost of living here really allowed me to invest more in my business. And then as I saw opportunities within Bali that I could build a business here and things like that, it really felt like, okay, this is a place that I can put some roots down and stay here for a while. So I've been really happy with my decision to live in Bali. I like the fact also that it's very central to Asia, the fact that, for me, I manufacture in Asia, so I'm in a similar time zone. I also employ people in the Philippines. I'm in the same time zone as them. So for me, it's really been a very positive experience. Do I think that Bali is where I will be forever? Probably not. I'm looking already into potentially what my next moves are, just because I think that long-term in Asia is just not necessarily that great when you're around my age and, you know, my demographic. Again, like, I'm single, I'm gay, I want to find a partner, and I don't think that Bali is really the best place for that. But on the other hand, it could be too. I mean, I've met a lot of really interesting people who are kind of passing through Bali on their journeys and things like that. But again, if you're coming here for business, or even if you're coming here later in life, I think that Bali has a lot to offer for investment. I mean, is it Kuala Lumpur? No, but in a way, thank God it's not, because I wouldn't want to live in Kuala Lumpur. I think that Bali is a really unique place. I think that it has just a lot of soul to offer, you know? So again, it might not be for everybody. It's not for the most buttoned up corporate guy, and I'm actually wearing this suit in an ironic way today, but you know, I am a creative person, and that's why I choose to live in Bali. So thank you guys for watching this video. I hope that it has given you some further clarification and insight if you watched the Nomad Capitalists video. And until the next time, take care, and I'll see you later.